Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so in this video, I'd like to comment on a recent interview with the niece. This is the niece of Jodi Hildebrandt. This is Jessi Hildebrandt, okay? She had a very recent interview with the Law and Crime Network where she basically said that she had firsthand information from one of the prosecutors that there was a very good chance that her aunt, Jodi Hildebrandt, would get the maximum sentence. She said there was a very good chance she would get a 60-year sentence.
Yeah, so I was able to speak to the DA a little bit that evening, and he informed me that the likelihood of her getting maximum sentencing is incredibly high, that she's most likely going to be getting the 60 years.
So let's notice that there are really two parts to what Jessi said. The one part is that she was given some kind of assurance or some kind of suggestion that there was a very good chance that her aunt would get the maximum sentence. Okay, but I kind of doubt it came out of the prosecutor's mouth that it would actually be 60 years. Okay, I think she probably heard maximum. And I think in her imagination, she probably supplied the 60 years because that's what we've all been hearing. Okay, but I'm not sure if the prosecutor actually said that she would get 60 years.
In Utah, the maximum penalty for second-degree felonies is 30 years. So if we had 15 counts, the maximum amount of time would have been 30 years. And each count carries a 1 to 15 years. So the difference in reality between 4 counts and 6 counts, in our calculation, wasn't enough to justify asking victims to go through a trial.
And this is because there's a section of the Utah statutes, okay, in Utah Code 763401, okay, there's actually a 30-year cap, okay, when you have stacked or consecutive second or third degree felonies. Now, Utah statutes do allow for consecutive sentences to multiply, indefinitely, but that's only if they're like first degree felonies or like capital felonies or whatever. But when you're subject to other exceptions, if you just have a second or third degree felony, you could have 15 or 20, however many. And even though they're consecutive, they cap at 30. So now we're learning more. And apparently, there's been a lot of misinformation on the internet. But meanwhile, there's always been this statute, and even the prosecutors knew about it. And so really, the statutory cap is just 30 years. And I think people will be very surprised also to learn that the minimum sentence for both Jodi and Ruby is probably a little bit less than what we actually thought, just a little bit. Okay, so the maximum is not as high as we thought. It's only 30 instead of 60. There's no 60 years. That's complete misinformation. And, I don't know what to say about that, but, the maximum is only 30. There's no 60. And then the minimum, I think people would be surprised to know that it's just a little bit less than what people thought.
In this case, neither Ruby Franke nor Jodi Hildebrandt have a criminal history. So the minimum sentence for the first aggravated abuse charge would be 18 months. But criminal defense attorney Jeremy Diaz says they would only have to serve 40% of each of the 3 remaining charges after that.
Where they're running 4 consecutively, the anticipation for the base that they will do is going to be 39.6 months.
That in this case, Hildebrandt's minimum is not 4 years, but 39.6 months.
So the minimum amount of time that they will serve will be just shy of 3 years and 4 months.
So 3 years and 4 months is the sentence they would serve if they got actually consecutive sentences. Okay, if the board actually accepted consecutive sentences, or I should say if the judge gives them consecutive sentences. Now, as I said before in a prior video, okay, the sentencing judge is not bound by Jodi and Ruby's plea agreements. Okay, the plea agreements basically say they're not contesting the possibility of consecutive sentences. Okay, but the judge who's going to hand the sentencing package to the parole board, basically, he's not bound by that. So I don't know. I can't say for sure. The judge is just going to rubber stamp it and just give them consecutives. He may choose to let a couple of them run consecutive and then maybe a couple of them run concurrent. That's up to the judge. I can't predict that. And I would say that, maybe there's a good chance that, let's say, at least for Ruby, maybe he'll just let one run consecutive. So if that happens, it could be even shorter. It could be even shorter minimum. And the same is true potentially also for Jodi. Although I think, to be quite honest, because there's so much, I think, political hatred towards, there's so much hatred in the air towards Jodi. I think, courts have a weird way of kind of picking up almost by osmosis. They sort of pick up the hatred in the air. And so, judges, I think deep down inside, they don't want to do anything super unpopular. So I think, just because of political pressure, I think the judge is probably likely to give Jodi at least all consecutives. Okay, not that she would normally get that if she wasn't such a famous defendant, but as far as like Ruby, I'm not sure. Ruby, I think might just get a little more leeway from the judge, because I think politically he could get away with more leeway. You know what I mean? And also, the judge is likely to give sentences that reflect a difference in the reprehensibility between these two defendants. So, I'm not going to predict anything, but I would say I wouldn't be surprised if the judge didn't automatically give consecutives, at least to Ruby. But as far as Jodi, I think there's going to be a lot of political pressure. So Jodi probably will get the consecutives, even if she wouldn't get that as an anonymous defendant. But as for the maximum, okay, the prosecutor has already admitted, okay, and other news sources, and I think even other YouTubers have discovered that there is this statutory cap. And so now it's being clarified in the internet that the 60 years is off the table, that the cap for the maximum, no matter how consecutive these counts run, is only going to be 30 years.
The maximum time for second-degree felonies is 30 years.
What's the maximum amount? Diaz says it's 30 years, but he doubts that they will serve that long.
So the question we all have now is, how long will the sentence actually be? Okay. And I realize, Jessi Hildebrandt says that one of the prosecutors told her there's a incredible chance, there's a fantastic chance that she'll be just getting the actual maximum. And I have to say, just from my experience now, I used to be an attorney. I was an attorney for like the first 10 years of my career. And since then, for like the last 13 years, I've been working, doing criminal defense, basically mostly federal criminal defense, and some state criminal defense in Florida. And I can say that from all my experience, I've done so many sentencings. I can't even remember how many sentencings I've done. Okay. I can't even remember half the sentencings that I've done. Okay. And I can just tell you guys, because Jodi Hildebrandt doesn't have any prior criminal history. Okay. And because she presents a mixture. In other words, she has a lot of very, very aggravating characteristics, okay, because she is a sadist and she really has tortured children. I mean, that's going to be proven. But on the other hand, she'll also be able to prove, and she'll bring witnesses to back her up, that she's also been a very upstanding member of the mental health community in Utah. And so it's going to be, for the board, they can't just weigh one side of it. Okay, they're gonna weigh the victim side, but they also have to weigh the mitigators. Okay, and the mitigators are that, whether we like it or not, Jodi Hildebrandt is not just somebody living in a trailer park, just living in the streets, just torturing people. She also has that professional side to her life, whether we like it or not, whether we think it's hypocritical, whether we think she's just being a phony. But, the board is going to have to weigh both sides. They're going to see she's a college educated person who, yes, she's abused her authority. That's true. But on the other hand, she's probably also, I would say in quotes, she could probably get witnesses to say that she's helped them with their mental health. So the board is going to be presented with a very balanced kind of a two sides, kind of a weighing of the aggravators versus the mitigators. And it's not only aggravators. There's a combination of aggravators and mitigators. So combined with the fact that this is the first offense for Jodi Hildebrandt, I would say that we're looking for something more probably in the middle between the maximum and the minimum. But on the other hand, and this is very important, okay, on the other hand, there's a lot of public sentiment against Jodi Hildebrandt. There's a lot of popular sentiment against Jodi Hildebrandt. And so whenever you're dealing with one of these bureaucracies or any of these arms of the government, okay, especially something like a parole board. The parole board has come under a lot of fire in Utah, and there's a lot of questions about how much power it has. So they always have to be careful not to do anything that like shocks and disappoints the public. Okay, so I think there's going to be some political pressure for the board members, maybe to give kind of a strong sentence to Jodi. Okay, and so maybe what they'll do is they may not give her the full 30 years. Okay, but they may give her something like 24 years or 25 years. Okay, or even I hate to say it, maybe they'll just give her 30 years, but here's the thing. They may give her 30 years, but I will say, okay, that the guideline in Utah is that people tend to serve about 40% of their sentences. So even if they give her 25 or 30 years, she would only end up doing 10 to 12 years. Okay. And that's important. Even if she got the full 30 years, the 40% guideline is only 12 years. I mean, that's the rule of thumb in Utah, is that you can pretty much count on 40% of a sentence. So even if she got the absolute max of 30, what she would really only serve would be like 12 years. Okay. Or if they gave her what looks like a terrible sentence and, oh my God, they gave her 25 years, she would only end up doing 10 years. But that's not all. And this is where I think Jodi Hildebrandt's attorneys are actually banking on their big strategy. Okay, I think this is the big hidden strategy. Okay, I think Jodi Hildebrandt's attorneys are going to try hard as hell to get her the smallest sentence possible at the initial hearing. Okay, that's what I think they're going to try to do, but I think they're realistic. And I think Jodi Hildebrandt's attorneys are aware that she may get a very bad sentence at the initial hearing. Okay, so here I'll say it. Okay. It's going to be about 6 months from the actual sentencing date. Okay, when the judge actually hands the sentence, they have to serve 6 months before they get their initial Board of Pardons and Parole hearing. Okay, that's where they're going to actually get the actual number of years, how much they have to serve in prison, right? So about 6 months after the sentencing, they're going to have their first hearing with the Board of Pardons and Parole. Okay, and I think that Jodi Hildebrandt's attorneys are being realistic. They're going to fight like hell, but they're expecting they're going to take a big hit in the initial hearing, and maybe they'll get some ugly sentence. Maybe it'll look like a 30-year, a 25-year, whatever. And I think they're ready for that. They're very smart, right? But I think the real ace up the sleeves of Jodi Hildebrandt's attorneys, and this is smart, and I think they're intelligent people. They know what they're doing. I think the ace up their sleeves is this thing called redetermination hearings and this other thing called special attention hearings. Okay, redetermination hearings and special attention hearings. Okay, they know they're taking a hit. Okay, they know that they already told Jodi, hey, you're going to do some time, right? You're going to do like 5 years, whatever, at least 5 years. And she's like, okay, I can do 5 years, whatever. You know, if you didn't have an attorney as good as me, you'd end up doing 30 years. And Jodi's probably like, oh yeah, okay, fine, you know, whatever, I'll do 5 years. Okay. Because they have this thing called redetermination hearings, which is that if it's a second degree felony, all right, if it's not like a major felony, if it's not like a first degree or capital felony or whatever, if it's just a second degree felony, you have a redetermination hearing every 5 years. Okay, so they're hoping that they'll take this massive hit. Okay, well, actually, hold on. I think the attorneys are going to fight like hell to get the smallest number on the initial hearing, but they're realistic. Realistically, they're expecting they're probably going to take a big hit, and they also have to be conservative. Okay, let's just assume the worst. Let's assume we take this terrible hit, but they're going to go for the redetermination hearings every 5 years. And on the first redetermination hearing, they're banking on the fact that Jodi Hildebrandt is going to be the best prisoner in the state of Utah. Okay, I mean, I know she's a hypocrite, and she is a hypocrite. She's a sadist, but they're probably banking that she's the kind of person that will be the most perfect prisoner you've ever seen. Okay, she will. And you know what? I'm not going to say 100% that she'll be the absolute best, but I think that's what they're thinking. And I think they think that Jodi is capable of being a superstar prisoner, right? They think that. And so on the first redetermination hearing, I think they're expecting they'll get a major cutback in the sentence and be looking at a much earlier parole date, you know, because at the redetermination hearing, they can change the sentence, right? They can bring it down. Okay, at least as I read this information from the Board of Parole and Pardons. Okay, so and then the other thing is there's a thing called special attention hearings, which is that if Jodi is like a superstar prisoner, okay, even prison officials or Board of Parole officials, you know, as they note her progress, at some point, maybe, you know, for the first few years, they're like, hey, you got to show us a little bit more, you know, you're just acting the part. But over the years and years, if she shows that she really is just like the best prisoner in the state of Utah, which she, you know, I'm saying she could probably, well, I think she thinks that she could pull that off. I think her attorneys think she could pull it off. So that if she were to pull off just being the superstar prisoner, okay, there's even something called a special attention hearing where even like prison officials or board of, you know, parole board officials, they could call a special hearing to get her sentence reevaluated, even on a shorter or other term other than just the 5 years for the for the redetermination hearings. So I think that's the ace that Jodi Hildebrandt's attorneys have up their sleeve, is these redetermination and these special attention hearings. And I think that over the years, after we've all forgotten, it's out of the public memory, they're going to come, they're going to sneak in, and they're going to cut it down. They're going to cut her sentence down. And so that's why I think she will not do 10 years. I think she'll end up doing like 7, like, 5 to 7, let's say 6 to 7 years is what I predict. Now, that doesn't mean that I think Jodi Hildebrandt is a good person. No, that's not what I'm saying. I think she's a sadist. I think she committed heinous crimes, but I'm being realistic because I work in criminal defense. Okay. And that's just being realistic. There are mechanisms in the law where a superstar person who is able to at least walk the walk and at least look like they're a superstar prisoner, they can, at some point, they can really play the system. And actually in Utah, they actually reevaluate the sentence every 5 years, or according to other periods, on special attention hearings. And I think that's how they're going to quietly come in after the public opinion has died down and we've all forgotten this case. I think they're going to come in like 4 or 5 years, and they're just going to sneak her down to a much lower sentence. So, that's just how I see it. And that's just being realistic. And I agree that Jodi Hildebrandt is by all accounts, she's a terrible person. She's a sadist. She's capable of torturing children. But I think that there's room for the game to be played here, especially considering that Jodi doesn't have any prior criminal history. And most likely, I think her attorneys think she could be a superstar prisoner. So I think in the end, we can talk all we want, and she may even get a 30-year sentence. Okay. But I guarantee you in 5 years, that's going to be updated. And I think we may be surprised at the actual final result. Once you do all the math and you do all the 40% guideline discount, and then also the fact that she can have her sentence reevaluated or on special attention hearing, they can cut it back that way. So I think that's the ace in the sleeve that I think her attorneys are really banking on. So anyway, I'm not trying to say that Jessi Hildebrandt is actually being dishonest. I think she believes what she was told. I think she heard that there was a great chance she would get a maximum sentence, and so I think she just understood that to mean 60 years. But when you actually do the real math, okay, I don't think any prosecutor told her 60 years. Okay, I think they just told her there was a good chance she would get the maximum. Okay, but the problem is that in 5 years, or even in a shorter period, there could be a special attention hearing or a reevaluation hearing where they could really cut back the sentence. And I think in the end, I could see her doing just 7 years, even if she does initially get, on paper, quotes, a 30-year sentence. So anyway, really appreciate your patience, and thanks for watching.